At the spring banquet, I fell for the young marquis at first sight. But no matter what, he just wouldn't give in. So I went all in and drugged him. After 3 days and nights of madness, I hobbled around with a sore waist, grinning ear to ear when I accepted the 10-mile betrothal gifts from the marquis's estate. The day after the wedding, staring at the man in front of me, I just wanted to cry. Dear heavens above, I had slept with the wrong man, the young Marcus's father. 1. The lacquered, gold-painted wedding gifts came streaming in one after another. The whole courtyard was glowing red. My father's jaw practically hit the ground. He didn't even notice the teacups slipping and spilling all over his robe. My daughter, you really pulled it off? He wiped the drool from the corner of his mouth, looking at me like I was some kind of hero. That's the mighty Carter estate we're talking about. Rubbing my aching waist, I blushed just thinking about those wild 3 days. Who would have guessed that William Carter, so gentle and refined by day, was such a powerhouse in bed? That night, between flickering candlelight, though I couldn't see his face clearly, those long fingers tracing down my back, his hot breath against my skin. Ouch! My father smacked my forehead hard. You little brat! Don't you dare make that disgusting face. I pointed at the sea of red silk and banners in the yard, pouting. You're not fooling anyone, Pa. You're grinning so wide your ears are about to split. Just then, Edith Joy bustled over, carrying 2 lively, gleaming wild geese. Such good fortune you have, my lady, she beamed. Lord Carter personally hunted these for you. Not easy to find geese this season. He waited by the lake for 3 whole days. She gave me a knowing look. Lord Carter said, wild geese mate for life. My heart gave a flutter. I pictured William Carter, bathed in moonlight, waiting silently by the lake. Someone so delicate he could barely lift a sword, yet stood guard for days just to bring me these geese. He truly, deeply loved me. My eyes stung, warmth filling my chest. I was too caught up to even notice the way Edith had addressed him. She went on, If you don't mind, my lady, should we set the wedding for 10 days from now? My father frowned. 10 days? Isn't that too rushed? Honestly, I thought the same. But then I thought of that lean waist and that solid grip. I quickly tugged at my father's sleeve, whispering, Pa, 10 is a great number. Perfect, complete, lucky. He still had that worried look. But I straightened my posture a little, pretending to hesitate. It's just, well. My father's eyes went wide. He snatched the betrothal documents from Edith's hands. Fine, 10 days it is. Even if it was a bit rushed, we didn't skimp on anything. My father, the richest man alive, made a dowry list longer than my nanny's old cloth wraps. Honestly, it looked like I was marrying into a throne. I quickly stopped him. Pa, just give me silver. Less of those flashy big things. I don't want too much attention. He agreed, it made sense. And then he added another chest of silver notes and land deeds for good measure. Mer 10 days flew by in a blink. Soon, it was my wedding day. It was such a grand event, even His Majesty showed up at the Carter estate, making it a huge deal. They said the Emperor had a few too many drinks and wouldn't stop shaking hands with the groom, chuckling all meaningfully. Heaven has truly heard our prayers. At last, the Carter line will continue. Wearing a phoenix crown and a heavy embroidered robe that weighed a ton, I stumbled through the endless ceremonies until finally someone helped me into the bridal room. Candles flickered all around. It was so quiet I could hear my own heart pounding. My stomach wouldn't stop growling. Why isn't William Carter here yet? I muttered under my breath, getting a bit antsy. Another half a stick of incense passed. I was so hungry I couldn't take it anymore. I reached under the blanket for some peanuts and grabbed the wedding wine from the table, nibbling and sipping slowly. The noise outside was dying down. My head was getting heavier. The phoenix crown was so heavy it made my neck ache. I couldn't help reaching up, trying to pry off all those heavy pins and ornaments, but no matter how I pulled, they wouldn't budge. Don't move. Let me help. A warm hand suddenly reached out. His voice was cool, but a bit hoarse. He smelled faintly of sandalwood, a comforting scent. I looked up and saw nothing but the blur of a red figure swaying in front of me. It must be William Carter, right? I obediently dropped my hands and let him fuss with the mess on my head. But he was clearly a rookie. He tugged so hard my scalp stung. I couldn't help but gripe. Do you even know what you're doing? Maybe we should call Olivia Green instead. The man seemed a little hurt and mumbled, I can learn. His hands moved more gently after that, but he was still clumsy enough to make me want to laugh and cry at the same time. Another half stick of incense later. My eyelids were too heavy to hold up. I felt like I was floating on clouds. Vaguely, I sensed someone propping up my head and laying me down on the mattress. Something warm and damp brushed over my skin, ticklish and a little bit electric. The touch was cautious but relentless. Annoyed, I swatted at it. Quit messing around. I want to sleep. But madam, tonight's our wedding night. His voice sounded a little helpless. Sleep. I cut him off. Oh, he answered meekly, but his hands didn't stop. That night, my sleep was anything but peaceful. It felt like someone kept setting little fires on me. Every time I scooted away, the flame would sneak closer again, inch by inch. In the end, I gave up fighting it, letting the warmth envelop me all night long. When I woke up with a dry mouth and a parched throat, the sun was already pouring into the room. I reached out, cold sheets. No sign of warmth left. Weird. Where did my human heater go? I called out, Olivia! She rushed in carrying a wash basin, looking a little awkward. As she twisted a hot towel, she chattered, Madam, you're finally up. It's already noon. What? Why didn't you wake me up? I bolted upright, but my legs were so weak I sucked in a sharp breath. Lord Carter said no one was to disturb you. He said you, were tired last night. Olivia's voice grew softer, her face turning pink. I quickly scooted over to the brass mirror. My undergarments were neat and clean. My makeup was all removed. But my neck, oh my God, covered in faint red marks that disappeared under the collar. I blinked, confused. Olivia, were you the one who cleaned me up last night? She looked bewildered. No, madam. None of us were allowed in the courtyard last night. But, she hesitated, her cheeks flushing deeper. Lord Carter called for water 3 times last night. I suddenly remembered the wet sensation from yesterday. My face flushed crimson. William Carter, actually. What a waste. Why'd I drink so much last night? Just as I was drowning in regret, Olivia had already quickly straightened everything up. Madam, everyone's waiting for you in the main hall. The moment I heard that, I grabbed my skirt and hurried to dash outside. First time meeting the elders. Can't be late. You already are, Olivia Green whispered. I had done some homework about the Carter Manor before. Lord Edward Carter was famously a cold-faced general. He was 28 this year and still unmarried. Rumor had it he took a heavy injury on the battlefield 10 years ago. If it hadn't been for Vice Commander John Blake risking his life to save him, he would have never made it back. But because of that injury, they said he couldn't have children. When he returned to the capital, out of gratitude, Edward took John Blake's whole family into the manor and even registered them under his own family name. From then on, William Blake became William Carter, and his birth mother, Diana Harper, turned into Edward Carter's only official concubine. When I stepped into the main hall, William Carter was already there, dressed in plain green robes, and Lord Carter, Edward Carter. Wait, hold on. That guy in the dark red robe in the main seat, he was Edward Carter? The terrifying grim lord everyone whispered about? There he was, leaning lazily against the chair, his long fingers tapping lightly on the armrest. A faint, playful smile tugged at his lips. His face was even more strikingly handsome than William's, especially those slightly upturned eyes, sharp enough to see right through you. For a moment, I was frozen, staring at him without blinking. Edward's smile deepened the longer I gawked. Olivia tugged at my sleeve to wake me up. Snapping out of it, I quickly pulled on William's sleeve. Why didn't you call me earlier? William glanced at me, his expression distant, then quickly lowered his head and said nothing. Ugh, what happened to the sweet, considerate guy from last night? Before I could figure it out, a deep, mellow voice rumbled above me. Charlotte, come here. I looked up at the man on the main seat, dazed, and shuffled over. Without thinking, I blurted out, Greetings, Father. Father? He tilted his head slightly, chuckling low, his tone dripping with amusement. So that's your thing, huh? I don't mind. Huh? I stood there, completely lost. Something definitely felt off. Have a seat, he said, pointing to a spot beside him. That's when I noticed a woman in a soft pink dress standing near Edward. Head to toe, She was decked out in jewels, her makeup flawless, and she was shooting me dirty looks. That had to be my mother in law, Diana Harper. At home, I wasn't exactly brought up on strict manners, but wasn't it kind of weird to sit while the mother in law was standing? Instinctively, I glanced at William for help, but he kept his head down like all of this had nothing to do with him. Edward, though, caught that look and didn't like it. Charlotte, what are you looking at him for? His smile faded, and a chill crept into his eyes. Thinking about all the scary things I'd heard about him, I shivered. I quickly plopped down onto the chair. Edward placed a hand warmer into my palms, his voice soft and gentle, completely not matching his scary reputation. Why are you up so early? Must be freezing. I looked outside at the blazing sun, then down at the hot little furnace in my hands, feeling super awkward. Luckily, Edward didn't press. Instead, he said slowly, "Since Charlotte is here now, let's start the tea ceremony." Hurriedly, I set aside the hand warmer and got up to kneel. But William moved faster. With a loud thud, he dropped to his knees in front of me, voice steady and clear. "Son greets mother." I froze. Mother? Was he talking to me? 5. I was still too stunned to speak. Off to the side, Diana Harper swayed her hips, kneeling in front of me with a tray of tea, her voice soft and sweet. "Greetings, sister. Please have some tea." Sister? My mind just blanked out. Diana was old enough to be my mother, for heaven's sake, and she had the nerve to call me sister? My head was buzzing like crazy. This had to be a dream. Surely it was. Diana's hand holding the tea started trembling. Her eyes welled up with tears as she looked pitifully at Edward Carter. "My lord, is sister unwilling to accept my tea because she despises me?" Edward casually waved his hand. "Then forget it." Instantly, Diana's eyes lit up with smug satisfaction. She straightened her back and got ready to hand the tea to a maid instead. But then Edward's voice cut through the room, cold and detached. "Anything Charlotte doesn't want, neither do I. Sister, please, I'm begging you, just drink the tea." Diana was so frightened she collapsed back to her knees with a thud. Tea splashed everywhere. A maid hurried to pour another cup, fresh and steaming. I pressed my hand to my forehead, glancing at Edward Carter, trying one more time to be sure. "My lord, are you really my husband? Not my father-in-law?" He chuckled and leaned in, whispering, "Madam, if you prefer, you can still call me father." "Father, my foot!" I rolled my eyes so hard in my head. Forget it. Might as well drink the tea first. I reached out and took the cup from Diana. Ouch, it was scalding hot. But just as I grabbed it, Diana suddenly flopped backward dramatically. "Ah, sister, why did you push me?" Startled, I dropped the cup. It flew straight at her and smacked her on the forehead. A nasty gash immediately opened up on her face. Diana instinctively touched the spot. When she saw her hand covered in blood, she let out another piercing scream. "Ah, my face!" Everyone in the room froze in shock. It was William Carter who moved first. He rushed over and checked Diana's injury carefully. "Charlotte Grace," he glared up at me, anger burning in his eyes. "You think just because you married my father, you can do whatever you like now? Enough!" Edward slammed his hand against the table, making the incense burner jump. Still, William refused to back down. "Have you forgotten, father? 10 years ago, my real father took an arrow for you. What did you promise him back then?" "William, please, stop talking." Diana choked out, blood-stained cloth slipping from her fingers. "It was all my fault. I should have known my presence upset sister. We'll leave for Luoyang immediately." "You think you can just leave?" A stern, elderly voice came from outside, accompanied by the thump of a walking stick against the ground. Mrs. Blake, hair white as snow, supported by 3 maids, crossed the threshold. Her eyes were sharp and cold. Everyone in the room immediately fell to their knees. William crawled over to her side. "Grandmother." 6. "Grandmother?" I lifted my head, baffled, and looked over at Edward Carter. From what I knew, he lost his parents when he was young. Where on earth did this grandmother pop up from? Edward leaned down, murmuring in my ear. "She's John Blake's elderly mother. We just brought her back the other day. She's getting old. Try to humor her." I pouted, muttering under my breath. "Well, I'm still young. How come no one's trying to humor me?" Edward just rubbed the top of my head helplessly. "Forget it. Do whatever you like." With those words, my confidence soared. I straightened my back and sat firmly in the chair. The old lady, seeing my attitude, raised her cane and swung it at me. Quick as a flash, I caught it with one hand. Eh! Missed! She was so furious her chest heaved and her hand, pointing at me, shook uncontrollably. You little... Don't get worked up here, take it back. I lightly tapped her on the backside with her cane and tossed it aside. Who would have thought the cane, flying just right, would smack straight into William Carter, who was standing nearby? Oops, slipped. The old lady's face turned the color of ash, and she immediately started crying to Edward Carter. My lord, how could you let such a disrespectful girl run wild in the house? Edward didn't even flinch, just stayed silent. My son, you traded your life for a heartless creature like this. She beat her chest and sobbed, howling like the end of the world was coming. I'm better off dead. She made a move to crash into a pillar. William and her maids scrambled to pull her back. The scuffle dragged on for almost half a stick of incense. Watching them, I couldn't help but yawn. Forget it. I didn't sleep well last night. I need a proper nap. Covering my chest, I pretended to gag. Ugh. Everyone froze, their expressions all over the place, and the room went dead quiet. I gave an awkward little smile. Sorry, might be pregnant? Edward's eyes lit up at once. He scooped me up without a second thought and barreled through the crowd. His voice, brimming with excitement, rang out. Call the imperial physician. In the end, the so-called big scene turned out to be just a case of me eating too many peanuts and bloating up my stomach. Because I just couldn't get over the crazy fact that my father-in-law had become my husband, I locked myself up in my room for 3 whole days. It wasn't until the day we were supposed to visit my family that I finally came out, cold-faced, arm in arm with Edward Carter, who was grinning like a blooming chrysanthemum. My father's going to lose it when he hears about this, I thought. But as we stood in front of the gates of the Grace estate, I realized I was the one about to be stunned. The place was deserted. Even the plaque over the door was gone. Dad! I grabbed my skirt and raced in, searching helplessly from room to room. Finally, deep in the crack of a rosewood table, I found a letter. Scrawled across it, it read, My dear daughter, take care till fate brings us together again. Old fox. I trembled with rage, squeezing the letter. No wonder he refused to let me see the marriage documents that night. Behind me, I heard rustling. Edward was leaning against the doorframe, trying real hard not to laugh. The golden threads on his dark crimson robe were practically shaking. I spun around and smacked the letter against his chest. You two planned this all along, didn't you? You wrong me, my lady, he said smoothly, catching my hand. Your father just missed his hometown, that's all. I yanked my hand back, my brain suddenly clicking. So it wasn't me who stumbled into your bed. You set the whole thing up, didn't you? By heaven's oath, he swore, pinning me lightly against the bookshelf. It was you who jumped me that night, complaining I was too slow, remember? Shut up! Not another word. Mortified, I clapped a hand over his mouth. Tell me straight, what did you really want, going through all this trouble to marry me? He gazed at me, something dark flickering in his eyes. Then, to my horror, he licked the palm of my hand. I jerked away immediately. He leaned close, his voice rough in my ear. A child who looks just like you. Try again. Fine, he said, teasing. Help me keep the harem in check. I'm aiming for a rebellion. What? I widened my eyes, glancing around nervously, then dropped my voice to a whisper. Am I going to die? Maybe, he said, completely unfazed. But if you don't, you'll have enough money to spend for a lifetime. I already have more than I can ever spend, I muttered under my breath. Anyway, you're my lawful wife now. If I die, you can't run away either. You'll drag your whole family down with you. And your father, too. No chance he'll survive. Well, what do you expect me to do? Off them first? Up to you. Deal, I agreed without blinking an eye. And just like that, I ended up in Edward Carter's bed. Why call it the thief's bed? Because that night, this guy just snuggled under my quilt and made himself right at home on my bed. I stood next to the bed, arms akimbo, furious. What do you think you're doing? Sleeping, Edward replied matter-of-factly, tugging the blanket down a little lower on purpose. Didn't you agree to help me manage the household? Start by managing me, he said, almost smug. Get back to your study. I glared at him, hoping to scare him off with my eyes. My lady, we're already married. Didn't you want to pounce on me before? Go ahead, don't hold back. He closed his eyes, looking all ready to be taken advantage of. I stared at that face, feeling totally torn deep down. Back when I drugged him, I was so afraid I'd chicken out last minute that I swallowed one myself. Now, standing here clear-headed, I honestly couldn't bring myself to do it. Ugh, it's so hot! When I didn't move for a while, Edward pulled the quilt open at his chest. I gasped. He actually wasn't wearing anything at all. Under the flickering candlelight, sweat trickled down his neck, disappearing into the dips of his collarbone. His firm chest rose and fell steadily. There wasn't an ounce of fat on his waist or abs, every line sharp enough to make you stare. I swallowed hard without thinking, my gaze sliding down by itself. There was a huge bulge under the blanket, barely hidden. I couldn't help imagining what was underneath. Before I knew it, my hands started to reach out, just as my fingertips were about to graze the heat. Reality hit me like a slap. Oh my God, Charlotte Grace, what the hell are you doing? Never trust a pretty face, but it was already too late. Edward grabbed my retreating hand and pressed it against. Charlotte, I feel terrible. His voice was hoarse and somehow sounded a bit pitiful. I panicked like I'd touched something burning. Ah! What do I do? Should I take another pill? The man chuckled low in his throat. Silly Charlotte, you're too adorable, he murmured. Then he flipped over and pinned me beneath him, thus taking full control. The candle flickered, casting overlapping shadows on the walls. The bed creaked and swayed with every movement. Edward had already called for water 5 times. I lay there, completely drained, just staring at the shaking bed frame, full of regret. I weakly protested. Be good. He silenced me with another kiss that swallowed up all my words. When Diana Harper came to pay her respects, I was still lying flat on the bed, every bone in my body aching like I'd been run over by a wagon. Turns out, those rumors about Edward Carter being useless were complete nonsense. He was definitely not useless. If anything, he was an absolute beast. Outside, Olivia Green was trying to block her. Miss Harper, the lady is resting. You insolent maid, how dare you stop me? Sister, I'm here to see you. Diana's voice carried closer and closer until she was right at my bedside. When her gaze landed on the bruises peeking out from the collar of my robes, the jealousy in her eyes nearly spilled over. She still forced herself to smile, though it looked painfully fake. Big sister, I saw you weren't feeling well the other day, so I made you some soup to help your stomach. I glanced at the dark, murky bowl in her hands, my nose wrinkling with disgust. Olivia, toss it out, I said. Diana Harper clearly wasn't expecting me to be so blunt and just stood there, stunned. Then she covered her face and began sobbing dramatically. Sister, I spent hours making this. If people hear about this, won't they say you're being petty out of jealousy? Oh, she cooked it herself? Even more reason not to even touch it. I waved for her to come closer. Diana, thinking I had given in, looked downright smug as she stepped forward. Once she got close, I lowered my voice and asked, Tell me, does the Lord ever sleep with you, huh? Her jaw dropped, totally caught off guard. Seizing the moment, I grabbed the bowl and shoved the soup straight into her mouth. Ah! She yelped, hopping around after burning her tongue, spitting it everywhere, pointing at me and yelling, I'm telling the Lord you bullied me. Go on, go, I said, waving her off like she was an annoying fly. Word was, Diana ran off crying to complain. The result? 3 months of house arrest. Meanwhile, Mrs. Blake staged a whole hunger strike at the ancestral hall, claiming she couldn't face the Blake ancestors without an apology from me. Edward Carter's reaction? Even colder. He just said, Your ancestors are in Luoyang. Don't kneel at the wrong grave, and sent her straight back to the Blake family's ancestral hall in Luoyang. Now everyone in the household knew me as the mean and unreasonable one. But honestly, after pulling a stunt like forcing her to drink that garbage soup, could I really expect a good reputation? My father always told me one thing. Life's too short. Stay happy. Lately, Edward Carter had been ghosting around the mansion. The only proof he even existed each night was the aching in my back and legs. He seemed to find sneaking around thrilling. Me, I was suffering. Could barely take a few steps without wobbling. I decided tonight that door was getting locked. Then there was William Carter. For some reason, he kept showing up in the same outfit he'd worn at the spring banquet. Weather was way colder now, yet he was still waving that damn fan around like a sick man. Honestly, if I'd never met Edward Carter, I might have thought William looked pretty good. But now? Humph. When William had paced past me for, I don't know, the 30th time, I finally couldn't hold it in anymore and looked up. "William Carter, are you here to mess with me?" He put on a fake look of surprise. "What a coincidence, Charlotte. You're here too." I rolled my eyes so hard it hurt. He'd been loitering in front of me for half an hour. "If you've got something to say, spit it out. Otherwise, I'm leaving." He stared at me, looking all hurt. "Charlotte, why are you treating me like this? You weren't like this before." I didn't bother with words. I just slapped him across the face, clean and crisp. "William Carter, who gave you the right to call me Charlotte? Show some respect and call me mother. And while we're at it, what you're wearing is an eyesore. Stop embarrassing yourself." I turned on my heel to leave, but William grabbed me into a hug. "Charlotte, I know you're still mad at me. You're mad I didn't show up that day, aren't you? I've loved you all along. That day, something weird happened. I passed out, and when I woke up, Father had already proposed marriage on my behalf. I'm sorry, Charlotte. It's all my fault. Can't you just give me another chance? Let go. I struggled hard, furious. I won't. I let go once, and look where it got me." I elbowed him straight in the chin. William crouched down in pain, his eyes burning red as he stared up at me, shouting, "Why? Is it because you've fallen for Edward Carter? He's so damn old. You used to like me. It was me." I shot him a glance. Skinny as a stick, sunken cheeks, not an ounce of fortune written on that face. How did I ever fancy him? Must have been starving back then. Maybe my disgust showed too clearly because he looked shattered. Clinging to my leg, he cried, "Charlotte, whatever he gives you, I can too. I'm younger, stronger, just give me a chance." I was about to kick him away when something flew over like a flash, nailed him right between the legs. William Carter let out a gut-wrenching scream and collapsed, out cold. A hint of deep red robes darted past the corner. At night, the locked door was simply torn down and someone showed up looking pitiful. "Charlotte, am I really that old?" "Yeah, if you try a bit harder, you could be my father. It's only 10 years. My own father's 10 years older than my mother, too." Creak, creak. The bed gave out pitiful noises under the strain. Determined to prove himself, someone went at it with all he had. Then, snap, the bed frame gave way. With quick reflexes, he wrapped his arms around my head and rolled us onto the table. The teacups crashed to the floor in a loud clatter. I gasped. "Enough, I can't." But he wasn't about to let me go, his breath hot against my face. "Charlotte, do I seem old now?" No, you're younger than me." I begged for mercy. "Please, I really can't take it anymore." He chuckled lowly, warm breath brushing my cheeks. "Let me prove it a bit more." "No." Before I could finish, he kissed me, silencing everything. That night, every single thing on the table ended up smashed. Even the dressing table by the wall didn't survive. Not until the gray light crept into the sky did he finally let me go, using his actions to show exactly what older and stronger meant. Edward Carter had been away south dealing with a flood crisis for over 2 months. Since he left, William Carter kept to himself so much it was creepy. Something felt wrong, but I couldn't find any proof. The only one still making noise was Diana Harper, because the lady was pregnant. The emperor, all pleased, showered her with gifts and even said, if she bore a baby boy, he'd make her a legal wife. After all, it'd be Edward's first legitimate heir. Diana, feeling unstoppable, practically wore a crown around the house. Acting like she was the lady of the manor, flaunting herself in front of me. Boxes of fancy supplements flowed endlessly into her room. Meanwhile, I was left with cold leftovers, sometimes even laced with poison. Under her tireless efforts, I finally coughed up blood. Olivia Green cried for physicians to come, but no one even bothered. The servants could smell which way the wind was blowing. 3 days into my bloody coughing fits, Diana couldn't hold back her curiosity anymore. Before she even reached my door, her heavy perfume suffocated the hallway. I coughed even harder. "My, look at you, sister. You're looking dreadful," she said, covering her nose daintily with a handkerchief, standing several steps away. I weakly lifted my head. "Just tuberculosis, nothing big." "Tuberculosis? Diana jumped back like she'd been burned. You? Why didn't you say so earlier? You plan on infecting everyone. I coughed so violently it tore at my chest and spat blood towards her. She shrieked and bolted, never daring to step near my courtyard again. But I knew she wasn't about to give up on trying to finish me off. So they had guards everywhere, no doctors allowed in, and me, not even allowed to step out of the courtyard. 7 days later, news of my death spread like wildfire across Capital City. Everyone on the streets was gossiping. The new lady of the marquis' household? Totally unlucky. Barely half a year after marrying in, and she died from tuberculosis, just like that. Diana Harper, with her pregnant belly, organized a proper and grand funeral and conveniently earned herself a reputation for being virtuous. But the truth? The fancy Nanmu coffin held a dog. As for the real me, she had me wrapped in a straw mat and dumped at a pauper's graveyard outside the city. Chapter 13. I woke up shivering from the bone-deep cold. When I opened my eyes, nothing around me looked familiar. It was empty and quiet. Only a few candles flickered in the dark, and I was lying flat on an ice bed. Something was off. According to the original escape plan, Olivia Green should have already picked me up, and we'd be halfway to Jiangnan by now. I heard soft footsteps. Panicking, I hurried to lie back down and shut my eyes. A pair of hands gently brushed over my cheeks, the voice dripping with obsession. Charlotte, you're only this obedient when you're asleep. Wait, that was William Carter's voice. Did he seriously think I was dead? And now he was. Preserving me on this ice bed or something? That's beyond creepy. Don't worry, whoever hurt you, I'll make sure they pay. Even my own mother if I have to. He kept muttering, his voice getting more and more twisted. I was frozen stiff from the cold, my fingers going numb, but I didn't dare move. Right when I thought I couldn't hold on anymore, there was a knock on the door. William's face went dark. He reluctantly pulled away. Charlotte, hang in there. I'll come see you again in a few days. As his footsteps faded, I immediately jumped off the ice bed, rubbing my arms for warmth nonstop. Seriously, if I'd waited a bit longer, I might have really frozen to death. Just as I was finally starting to feel a bit of heat return, footsteps again. What? He's back already? Groaning inwardly, I flopped back onto the bed and pretended to play dead. But this time, he didn't touch me. He just stood there silently. Suspicious, I cracked an eye open. That's when I felt something warm brush against my eyelids. I jerked up, shoving him away, arms crossed tightly over my chest. Edward Carter, not here, I shrieked. Standing before me was none other than Edward Carter, who should have been in Jiangnan. Edward chuckled lowly, eyes glinting with mischief. My dear wife, so you're into this interesting hobby? He gave the ice bed a thoughtful glance. Hot 1 second, freezing the next. Must be quite the thrill. You, I stammered furiously, my face burning. All right, I'll stop teasing you. He scooped me up from the ice bed effortlessly, settling me onto his lap, his hands busy rubbing warmth back into my palms. Don't be greedy for cold, or you'll end up crying again when your monthly pains come. His body was so warm. Almost instantly, the chill melted away, replaced by cozy heat. Too cozy. I could feel something stirring beneath me. Horrified, I quickly scrambled off his lap. How much longer do I have to stay here? I asked, flustered. 3 days, he said after a slight pause. But don't worry, during that time, he won't show up again. Oh, Charlotte, I can't stay with you here. If you need anything, just call out. My men are stationed all around. Grabbing the front of his robe, I glared fiercely up at him. Edward Carter, if you die, I'm remarrying, you hear me? I'm not spending my life mourning you. And if you don't die, there's something I need to tell you when you get back. He ruffled my hair gently, his eyes filled with tenderness. At last he murmured, all right. 14. A lot can happen in just 3 days. Edward Carter got thrown into prison over false rebellion charges. And William Carter, thanks to his so-called loyalty, he got himself a shiny new title, Marquis of Loyalty and Righteousness. Talk about stealing the spotlight. The next time I laid eyes on William was 3 days later. He stumbled in front of me, drunk as a skunk, wearing a bright red wedding robe. Charlotte, I'm here to marry you, he slurred, shoving a wine cup at my mouth. 1 sip of this wedding wine, and we're officially husband and wife. I pressed my lips tight. The wine spilled down my mouth, dripping onto the cold bed beneath me, vanishing almost instantly. William's face changed the moment he saw that. He got impatient, grabbed my chin roughly, and tried pouring the wine straight into my mouth. Cough, cough. The burning alcohol went straight down my throat, making me hack uncontrollably. William was staring at me like he'd just seen a miracle, his eyes wild with hope. Charlotte, you're awake? Am I dreaming right now? Then his smile froze, because I'd just shoved a dagger straight into his chest. Cold steel glinted. Blood seeped through his clothes. Why? He gasped, wide-eyed, full of disbelief. I've wanted to do this for a long time, I said, shoving the dagger even deeper, like I could bleed out all the suffering he'd caused me these days. He laughed then. It was a chilling, broken sound. Suddenly, he yanked the dagger out of his own chest. Blood sprayed everywhere, splashing onto the icy bed, blooming like grim red flowers. Charlotte Grace, he hissed, eyes burning. You started all this? You're mine, mine. Ignoring his bleeding wound, he shoved me down onto the cold bed. Let's fix all those mistakes right now, he growled, reaching to tear at my clothes. But I stopped fighting. William blinked, confused. Before he could realize what was happening, he collapsed onto me like a sack of flour. I shoved him off in disgust and scrambled off the bed. Maybe now you'll get a real feel for how damn cold that bed is, I scoffed. Don't look at me like that. I just smeared a little poison on the blade. Couldn't exactly guarantee you'd die with one stab. I bent down, picked up the dagger, and started walking toward him again. I was just about to finish him off when William laughed again. This time it was a smug, mocking laugh. What are you laughing at? I snapped, heart pounding with sudden dread. Killing me won't change anything. Edward Carter's dead, he said softly, like it was nothing. But those words hit me like a hammer to the chest. No way, I blurted out, but there was a tremor in my voice I couldn't hide. He sneered, tilting his head toward the table. Take a look at the wedding gift I brought you. My gaze snapped to the table. There was a beautifully wrapped box sitting there, tied up with a red ribbon. Handshaking, I reached out and slowly opened it. Inside, 2 severed heads. One of the heads was Diana Harper's. Her eyes were wide with terror, probably never even dreamed she'd end up dying at her own son's hands. And the other? It was Edward Carter's. It felt like a lightning bolt struck me. I slammed the lid shut in a panic. My stomach twisted and turned. I doubled over, gagging uncontrollably. William Carter just laughed louder, looking absolutely wild. Charlotte, I told you, anyone who hurt you deserves to die. Now, there's no one left to stop us. Ah. The words froze in his throat. He looked down in horror at the dagger buried in his chest. This time, I twisted the blade. Made sure he wouldn't make it. Carrying the heavy wooden box, my face blank, I walked down the long corridor. When I reached the toilet, I lifted the box, ready to toss it into the cesspit. Before I could, a slender hand blocked my way. Charlotte, you hate me that much? I looked up and right into Edward Carter's eyes, twinkling with a wry smile. His red robe was covered in dust, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days, with dark circles under his eyes and stubble on his chin. You still have the nerve to come back. I lunged at him and sank my teeth into his hand. Tears and the taste of blood filled my mouth. This bastard! When I saw those heads, I truly thought he was dead. Edward hissed in pain, sucking in a sharp breath. Didn't I come back alive? A woman! You actually bit me! My tears splattered all over his hand. He panicked, fumbling to wipe them away. But the more he wiped, the more they flowed. In the end, he helplessly offered his other hand. Getting tired? Want to bite the other one? When I finally let go, 2 rows of bloody teeth marks were glaringly clear on his hand. Edward didn't even flinch. Instead, he lifted his hand and kissed it lightly. Still smells like you, Charlotte. I was shaking with anger. Edward Carter, I want a divorce. I'm going back to Jiangnan to find my father. But before I could finish, Edward scooped me into his arms. Divorce? Dream on. Put me down. I'm getting myself 18 lovers. Why not just keep me? I'm worth at least 18. He pinned me against a post, his nose brushing my ear. I can outlast 18 men easy. Lord, my lord. The steward came rushing over, flustered. The Ministry of Justice men are here to arrest William Carter, but... The steward glanced at me, hesitating, then added, He's already dead. Madam took care of him. Edward's forehead twitched. Dead's fine. Toss his corpse to the dogs. I don't have time for him. Taking advantage of the distraction, I wriggled out of his arms and shot him a frosty glare. Don't think I'll forgive you just because you're back. Edward caught me again, pulling me tightly against him. My lady, I've got a better idea for revenge. He whispered close to my ear, his voice low and teasing. Chain me to the bed and punish me every single night. On the carriage heading to Jiangnan, I was nibbling on a hawthorn cake, almost spraying crumbs all over Edward Carter's face. So you're telling me all this was a trap you and His Majesty set for the second prince? I asked, half squinting. Edward wiped the corners of my mouth with a handkerchief, looking graceful as ever. To be precise, it was a game we started playing 10 years ago, he said casually. The second prince was the legitimate eldest son of the late emperor. When the new emperor took the throne young, the second prince never got over it, thinking he was the rightful heir. He started gathering troops and drawing in supporters from the shadows, but Edward had always been his biggest obstacle. 10 years ago, the second prince bribed John Blake, Edward's trusted deputy, planning to assassinate him on the battlefield. Edward chuckled lowly at the memory. Honestly, John nearly pulled it off, he murmured as he twirled a lock of my hair between his fingers. If that arrow had veered 3 more inches, you'd be a widow now, he teased. I pinched his side in annoyance. Yeah, right. People lining up to marry me would have stretched from the capital to Jiangnan. You hear me? He cut me off with a kiss, deep and lingering, until I was practically gasping for air. When he finally pulled away, he looked down at me, curious. Charlotte, how'd you know that head they sent wasn't mine? It looked spot on. I glared at him. You had a bite mark at the corner of your mouth. I gave it to you. I huffed. Edward chuckled again, gently touching the small scab there, his eyes full of tenderness. Still mad, I shot him another sharp glare and finally asked the question I'd been holding back. Edward Carter, when exactly did you start setting your eyes on me? 10 years ago, he said almost sheepishly. Pervert, I was 6, I exclaimed, half furious, half embarrassed. You really don't remember? Remember what? The carriage jolted violently, and before I could react, I tumbled straight into his arms. He caught me firmly, shielding my head with his hand. Back then, while I was recovering down south, some little girl kept sneaking over the wall to give me sweets, he said, voice soft. A flood of memories hit me. The rainy alleys paved with blue stones, the gloomy boy dressed in black, and the candied fruits I'd hidden in my skirt. That grumpy guy was you? I gasped at him. You threatened to break my legs if I showed up again. Edward's ears turned noticeably red. I was bluffing? So you recognized me all along, I accused. Edward tackled me onto the soft couch, his face full of mischief. My lady, want to try something fun? Try what? I blinked, suspicious. Suddenly catching on, I shrieked. Edward Carter, we're still on the carriage. So, makes it more exciting. I could feel my ears burning. How could someone with such a gentlemanly face spit out shameless words more naturally than a street rogue? I nodded defiantly. Fine, let's see what you've got. Half a stick of incense later. Edward was drenched in sweat, staring grimly at my belly. Seriously? Another challenger already? He muttered through clenched teeth. The end?